The waiter leaned toward me so gently I almost mistook his breath for the candle's sigh. "Ma'am," he whispered, eyes fixed on the linen. "Is anyone else supposed to be signing in your name tonight?" My fingers paused over the water glass. "No," I said, keeping my voice small. "Why?" He pointed barely with his chin toward the study door down the hall, where the hum of a small printer drifted into the dining room like a nervous heartbeat. "Because someone in there is printing a document with your name at the top." The chandelier seemed to flicker. Across the table, my daughter-in-law's mother lifted her crystal as if nothing at all were happening, and smiled the way a lighthouse smiles, bright, fixed, sure that ships will obey. I smiled back, folded my hands like a quiet, grateful woman who'd never ask questions, and acted exactly as they expected, poor, naive, invisible. Before I tell you how the room fell silent, please subscribe and tell me in the comments which city you're listening from. Your support lets me keep sharing these true stories of family and courage. They invited me to dinner to welcome me properly into the family. That was the phrase in the text, sprinkled with gold hearts and confetti, as if parties could bless paper. The house was the kind that looks expensive before you even see it. The paved drive edged with white stones. The porch pots cut into topiaries that knew their shapes. The doorbell that didn't ring so much as an ounce. Inside, everything smelled like lemon oil in confidence. The kind of confidence that doesn't check the mirror because it knows the mirror will behave. "Mother," my son Daniel said, taking my coat. He kissed my temple and tried to sound carefree, but I heard the tightness threading his words. He carried tightness in his voice, the way other men carried a wallet, ever close, often hidden. "Let me," said his wife, Lila, reaching for my bag. Her fingers were graceful and quick. She'd grown up around people who measured time in glances. Her mother, Mrs. Wells, Monica to her friends, just Monica, watched with a smile that she had practiced for years. Champagne silk blouse, pearls that understood lighting, perfume with an education. "We're so glad you're here, Simone," she said. "You must be relieved to have such help now that Daniel has a proper partner." Proper. I put that word in my pocket like a small stone. Later, I would need its weight to hold truth in place. They had planned the evening down to the napkin folds. A tiny gold W. Wells pressed into the corner of the linen. A piano playlist with no lyrics, because words make people think. Tasteful clouds on the walls, paintings that looked like they remembered being oceans. Somewhere, a grandfather clock swallowed the seconds politely. We sat. We smiled. The waiter poured. The study door stayed shut, and behind it something waited for its cue. "Before we eat," Monica said, tapping her glass, "a little toast to unity." She lifted a pale folder like a trained dove. "A small family agreement. We can sign it later, after dessert." The waiter's whisper was still in my ear. I lowered my eyes and nodded like someone who nods often. I have learned you can win a room by allowing it to be sure of itself first. On my way in, I had noticed the family gallery, portraits marching down the hall. In the earliest photo, Monica stood centered on a lawn cropped like velvet. In the latest, she stood centered again at her daughter's wedding. Even the bride turned slightly toward the mother as if light obeyed lineage. Some families posed, the Wells family choreographs. Appetizers arrived in neat squares that tasted like decisions. Victor, Monica's husband, talked about charities the way some men talk about boats. Long words, long shadows. "Daniel tells us you're between things," he said to me, gentle as a velvet trap. "I'm between many things," I said. "Laundry and tomorrow, mostly." They laughed, the way people laugh at a paperweight. Quaint, heavy, safely small. The folder on the sideboard waited, unblinking. We moved to the dining table. Name cards with formal loops. Mine read Simone, mother, as if I were a supporting character in a play, already blocking its applause. The water glasses shone like promises, about to be revised. The first course came with compliments, and a casual note from Lila about all the ways our households can support each other, the way one might talk about weather patterns. Now that Daniel is part of a bigger vision, she said. We do like to keep, well, clarity, boundaries, expectations. My mother put something together to keep love smooth. She paired love and smooth as if they were old friends. Older women know love is rarely smooth. It is a river, beautiful when it moves, dangerous when it pretends to be a pond. Of course, I murmured, eyes down. I like clarity, Monica glowed. We thought you would. It's really just a support outline. How we help, how we don't, to avoid misunderstandings. You know how my family has standards. Standards, proper, clarity. I could have set the table with their favorite words. The waiter refreshed my water. That was when I noticed the extra wine glass near my plate, empty, but with the faintest lipstick print already on the rim, as if someone had rehearsed my presence before I arrived. I lifted it, turned it, and smiled. What a lovely shape, I said. Monica fluttered a hand. We do little tastings for staff, teaching them to notice quality. She glanced at the waiter with a look that says, remember your place and the roof above it. He did not meet her eyes. Under the table, my phone buzzed once. A message of 3 words from an old friend who had no business knowing my evening plans. I'm outside. Breathe. I kept my hands folded and my face soft. Poor, naive women often have friends who owe them favors. And some favors bloom like night jasmine quietly when no one is looking. I excused myself. Even the hand soap had an accent. I practiced the face that gets me through rooms like this. Soft around the mouth, patient in the eyes, the exact expression of a woman people underestimate in public and remember in private. We talked in circles. The conversation moved like a river pretending to be a pond. Each time I turned it toward Daniel, his job, his hours, the shadows under his kindness, Monica floated it back. And you're in that little duplex still? She asked. It must feel snug. Snug keeps the heat in, I said. Of course, she said, smiling. We simply didn't want any pressure. For you to feel you must give or expect. Family should be generous, but also prudent. She held prudent like a prudent person. The study door opened for the length of a breath. A man in a gray suit slipped out, holding a stack of fresh paper, and vanished. Towards the kitchen with the steps of a careful ghost. I pressed my napkin to my mouth and released the kind of sigh you are permitted when people assume you are harmless. From somewhere, the grandfather clock sighed the half hour, soft, expensive, confident it would be obeyed. You asked me to act poor and naive. I did it well because once I was. After my husband's accident, the bills arrived dressed as envelopes, and the cupboards learned to echo. I cleaned offices at night and learned which desks hid granola bars. I smiled at secretaries who pretended not to see me and left apples in the 3rd drawer anyway. I sold rings that had promised forever and bought shoes that promised tomorrow. Which churches served soup without speeches? Which laundromats had machines that would run if you kicked just right? Which teachers looked at Daniel and saw a boy instead of a balanced duel? I learned all that. People think poverty is hunger. They forget it is also knowledge. You learn to read rooms the way a safecracker hears tumblers. You count the minutes between one kindness and the next. So when Monica hummed clarity and slid the folder to the center of the table like a dessert, I knew what it would taste like before I read it. Let's just look together, she said. A family memo. The top sheet bore my name. It wasn't the watermark that concerned me. It was the font. Thin, modern. The kind that pretends to be gentle while it sharpens its clauses. It began sweet. We seek harmony between households. Then the sugar melted. No monetary requests shall be made of Daniel and Leela for the benefit of Simone without written notice 30 days in advance. Simone shall not offer to live with, visit unannounced, or otherwise overstimulate the new home. Gifts to Simone, if any, will be approved by the Wells Family Committee, approved committee. My name appeared on a line marked recipient. The last page was a graveyard of signature lines, a notary block faintly gray, polite as a glove. I smiled at it the way a mother smiles when her baby plays with the cat's tail. Interested? Untroubled? Waiting for the lesson? Do you like it? Monica asked. It's very thorough, I said. We are thorough, she answered, lowering the curtain of pride. The notary, a man with careful hair and shoes that refused to squeak, uncapped a silver pen that flashed once like a fish. He placed it near my plate as if the length of my reach were the only measure between me and a cage. What's that one? I asked, nodding to the second folder beneath the first. Oh, Monica said, as if I'd pointed at a napkin. That's the support pledge for Daniel. He'll be working with Victor's foundation. Her nail tapped the page in a rhythm I'd heard in boardrooms where silence was for sale. A modest salary at first, of course. Family is about opportunity, not entitlement. Have learned to count backward from 10 when people call control an opportunity. 9. The waiter set down the main course. 8. A car door closed outside. 7. My phone buzzed once, then went still. 6. The piano found a hopeful chord. 5. They served sea bass that broke like confetti. The garnish was a leaf with a trust fund. I tasted salt and practice. You might think I brought a lawyer. I didn't. I brought someone better, a woman who keeps receipts because she never expects to be believed. Miss Carter has the spectacled softness of a librarian, useful because intimidation is a slow form of sift. She was my neighbor when the duplex walls were thin and the rent was thinner. We traded soups and silence. Now she works at the bank off River Street, where tellers have learned that when her pen starts clicking, math is about to become a sermon. At 4 o'clock, she texted, "He moved your son's money. How's the fish?" Monica asked, watching my face like a barometer. "Tender," I said, "like plans." "We do love a woman with humor," she cooed. "We do," I said. When her sister lost a house to a signature that looked like mercy, Miss Carter made a promise to numbers. "If paper talks, I'll listen," she told me, turning a page as if truth were thin china. "And I'll teach other women how to hear." Victor described the Wells Foundation for Community Uplift. Words like incubator, pipeline, and stewardship rolled out like a red carpet leading to a locked door. The office, he said, had a glass wall you weren't allowed to photograph. "And what exactly?" I asked, polite as rain. "Does the foundation uplift?" "Well," he said, pleased, "young men like Daniel. We bring them in close, teach them how capital flows." "Like a family?" I asked. "Exactly," he said, missing the edge in my smile. "Some families call it mentorship, some permission, some acquisition. I have learned to ask what happens when the word no enters a generous room." From the kitchen, steam slipped under the door and dissolved into our air, the way difficult truths dissolve into nice conversations, quiet, persistent, warmer than people prefer. Monica clapped her hands like a head mistress at a good school. "Shall we do our little signatures?" she sang. Just to clear the air, the study door opened fully. The notary entered with gray suit, a man starched and brisk, relieved to be indoors and out of the weather of other people's lives. Daniel's fork scraped his plate. "Mom, it's nothing," he said too quickly. "Just clarity." I touched his sleeve. "Clarity keeps us honest," I said, and let my smile be warm enough to hide a match. The waiter laid the silver pen near my hand. "Whenever you're ready, ma'am." "Thank you," I said. "One moment." I lifted the first folder, then flipped to the second. "Let me start with the support pledge for my son," I said. A mother should read the path her child is invited to walk. Victor's jaw shifted so slightly you might have called it a yawn. The first paragraph looked helpful. The third looked hungry. All intellectual output created by Daniel while employed by the foundation, whether on or off hours, shall be owned by the foundation. The fifth had teeth. Daniel's personal savings, consolidated for prudent stewardship, will be supervised by the foundation's appointed advisor. I turned a page. The sixth hit a second mouth inside it like a pearl in a familiar shell. In consideration of family support to Simone, Daniel agrees to a temporary reassignment of beneficiaries on his life insurance and retirement accounts. I looked at my boy. His face was the color of someone who hasn't slept beside his own best thoughts in a while. "Did you read this?" I asked low. "They said it was Standard, he whispered. Of course it is, I said, eyes on Monica. Standards are how wolves teach lambs to be organized. She laughed as if I'd complimented her shoes. Oh, Simone, you're precious. People say that, I said mildly. Before dessert, I said, may I use your restroom? Of course, Monica smiled, victory in her voice. She believed every hallway led back to the table she had set. But the powder room is beside the study, and doors mean less to women who pay attention with their ears. I washed my hands, counted the faucet drips, opened the window an inch to let in a little honest night. Then I stepped into the hall, just as the notary in grey suit leaned over the desk, murmuring, 2 signatures. The mother's here tonight. Advisor wants the forms in the vault by morning. I moved on cat feet. Naive women are allowed to wander. Poor women are expected to be impressed by wood paneling. At the doorway, I read a page upside down, like a woman who learned to decipher price tags no one meant her to see. It wasn't a family memo. It was a transfer of control, not only over me, over my son. The printer resumed, soft, relentless. A machine cannot tell the difference between a love letter and a leash. Some stories depend on volume. This one depends on paper. I took out my phone and snapped 3 photos. Quick as a blink, I didn't bother having. Back in the powder room, I texted to Miss Carter, Clause 6C, beneficiary reassignment. Coming back. I'll stall. To the waiter, if you have a mother you know. Maker's door latch. There are doors rich houses forget to watch. The service exit that breathes out warm dishwater, the pantry throat. When I returned, the pen waited like a promise. I'm so grateful, I said, and meant it. Gratitude is a ladder. People will hold the bottom while you climb if you keep thanking them for the rungs. Monica nodded to the notary. We'll begin. Under my breath, I said a 2-word prayer that has walked me across more rooms than any other. Stay steady. Before we sign, I'd like to say a few words about how I came to be so grateful, I began, folding my napkin as if it were a prayer shawl. I was 25 when life stopped being fair in obvious ways. My husband fell into a silence, and I learned the price of milk in 3 different stores. I learned which hours never end and which end too soon. I learned that sometimes the person who loves you is the person who needs you to be quiet about it. Victor drank. Monica watched me like a cat watches a bird. It does not plan to eat yet. I learned to keep receipts, I said softly, because I watched men keep promises. Monica smiled. We keep records too, she said. I know, I said. I brought mine. The back door clicked somewhere in the house. Soft footsteps, the kind that belong to librarians and women who do not apologize for arithmetic, moved across tile. Paper has a smell when it has been honest for a long time. Cleaner than dust, warmer than bleach. My blue ledger smelled like a kitchen that never lied. I unzipped my simple purse, the one Monica called sweet, and took out a ledger bound in cheap blue. Its edges were softened by years. The numbers were not. I brought this because I wondered if tonight's generosity might be like generosity I've met before. The kind with a hook hiding in the bowl. I turned the book toward Daniel first. Do you remember the apartment over the laundromat with the window that stuck in summer? He smiled despite himself. With the mint plant on the sill. That mint paid for your first interview shoes, I said. And when scholarships were late, this ordinary book covered your dorm deposit. Page 14. When your father's hospital bill scared the landlord, page 22. And when you married under the oak behind the church where laughter tried to outsing worry, page 41. I touched the totals. Is the day I sold the last thing your father ever bought me so you could sign your lease. No one needs to know a ring's history to enjoy its sparkle. Daniel's eyes filled. Monica leaned in and met the one thing power never expects from those it underestimates. Proof without perfume. I kept receipts, I repeated, sliding photocopies to the notary. Since we all love clarity, the notary's professional face barely moved, but his eyes tilted for a breath and said what his mouth could not. I see. Miss Carter appeared at my shoulder as if the house had softened and let her through. "Hello?" she said serenely. "Victor, we've met. Your advisor's office sends very pretty quarterly letters." Victor's fork hung above his plate. "I beg your pardon?" "She won't," I said kindly. "She prefers accuracy. Miss Carter is here to answer one question before I sign anything. Where does generosity go when it leaves the hands that earned it?" Miss Carter set a thin printout beside the centerpiece. It looked light until you read the numbers. She traced columns with a finger that had made men return pens because they were not finished telling the truth. Endowment, mostly fine. Disbursements, thin and showy. But these, she tapped, are personal accounts tied to your stewardship program. 3 young men last year, consolidated funds. 2 were later diverted to Wells Strategic Bridge LLC. The bridge is scenic. It only crosses one way. "That information is privileged," Victor said. "Only if secrecy is a form of charity," Miss Carter replied. The waiter set a demi-tasse before me and placed a sugar packet folded once. Inside a pencil scratch, backlatch, a kitchen staff union of 2. Him and his mother somewhere, always somewhere. "Simone," Monica said, aiming for soothing, hitting brittle. "I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. We meant to protect Daniel. And you. You have needs." "I have needs," I said. "Truth has one too. Space." "I don't appreciate," Victor began. "I didn't come for appreciation," I said. "I came to say thank you. Thank you for showing me who you are, in time for me to decide who to be tonight." The notary cleared his throat, like a man returning a scalpel that will not be needed after all. "Yes," I said. "Let's proceed. With dessert." A mother's tone is a harbor in a storm and a lightning warning. It does not rise. It decides. Daniel pushed his chair back as if gravity had finally remembered him. "Lila," he said softly, "did you know about the beneficiary change?" "I knew it was standard," she whispered, shame flickering. Mother says many things," I said gently. "Truth can speak too if we let it," he turned to me. "I should have read it all." "We all should read the rooms we enter," I said. "Some of us are simply taught not to." He laughed once without humor. "I wanted them to like me." "I want you to like you," I said. Miss Carter placed a small recorder on the table. Draft versions in the study tonight, time-stamped, included a care annuity clause attaching Simone's future choices to a committee. "It has been deleted from the final, which means it was there." Monica found a breath. "We were protecting everyone from future misunderstandings. Aging is complicated. I agree," I said, "which is why it should not be managed by people who think transparency is optional." Lila reached for her water and said it precisely. Within the poster ring, the small portrait of a woman trained to color, inside lines even when the picture is wrong. "Mother," she said, eyes lowered, "I don't like this." "Here is what will happen," I said, not raising my voice. "Women like me keep our voices like we keep our receipts, intact. I will not sign your memo. Daniel will not sign away his mind or his money. If your foundation truly uplifts, it will welcome a third-party audit with cheerful speed. And because I believe in mercy the way I believe in breakfast, I'll say this. Apologize to my son. Correct your documents, and I will not take this ledger." I tapped the totals that showed who had truly supported whom. "To the paper downtown that still runs a column with a long memory." Victor's mouth shaped a word in a language he had not used in years. Monica tried another door. "Simone," she said, softer, "you don't understand how expensive a future can be. We were trying to—" "I do," I said. "I lived one." Leela looked between us and found a new expression. The look daughters give mothers when they see them as women, fallible, frightened, still learning. Monica blinked and looked away, as if the light had moved. Silence has flavors. This one tasted like a candle snuffed with wet fingers. Lila looked at the folder, then at me, then at her mother. "This isn't how I want our marriage to start," she said to Daniel, a line of quiet rebellion drawing itself across her face. "I'm sorry. I should have read everything with you." Daniel covered her hand. For the first time that evening, I saw my boy in his own eyes again. "Shall we have cake?" Monica asked, and found there was no cake for this moment. "No," I said. "Let's have clarity." When Daniel was 8, I baked a box cake and cut 13 slices for 9 guests. The extras were insurance against rain and hurt feelings. Clarity is like extra cake. It seems unnecessary until someone is left with nothing. Miss Carter slid an envelope across the table, the way people slide lifesavers toward the drowning. "Auditors who take coffee very seriously," she told Victor. "You may call them before I do." The notary capped his pen as if tucking a child in, quietly, decisively. The waiter returned with small soufflés, because even truce is kinder with sugar. He set one before me and leaned as if adjusting the plate. "Back door is unlatched if you need air," he murmured. "I need air," I said, and stood. On my way to the porch, I passed a photograph of Lila at 12. Violin tucked under her chin, posture perfect, eyes patient. Some girls learn to hold a note until a room agrees it is beautiful. Some women stop doing that. The night smelled of boxwood and the river, though we were 2 miles away. Savannah's air is a stitched thing. It pulls in every story and wears them all. Ospreys haunt its memory. Freight horns thread its sleep. Across the street, oaks leaned like gray-haired men in long conversation. In a kitchen window 2 houses down, a child walked a spoon around a bowl, a tiny moon circling an honest planet. I let the quiet wash my ears. Behind me, through the glass, I saw my son stand straighter. Lila took his hand with both of hers, which is how women say they are ready to stop pretending. The waiter stood in the porch shadow, hat in hand. "My mother signs anything they put in front of her," he whispered. "She cleans houses." I told her, "Ask someone to read it with you." She said it's rude to doubt kindness. "It isn't rude," I told him. "It's faithful." He nodded and disappeared like staff are trained to disappear. Not gone, just elsewhere. I breathed in, out, counted the seconds between the two. Went back in. We didn't call the police. Evil doesn't always wear a mask that photographs well. We turned off a printer. We rearranged chairs. We asked the paper to speak truthfully. Victor, pale, agreed to a third-party audit that would arrive in December. Undeniable and entirely itself. Monica asked for a copy of my ledger and I declined. Truce is not a party favor. Lila, shamefaced, brought coffee in mugs that had never belonged to a committee. She cried without sound. I held her like a future. "Your mother loves control," I said, "because it holds her together. You can love her and still say no. Love isn't a leash. It's a door with a light on." She nodded, and I watched that first small yes settle into her shoulders like a shawl that finally belonged. We stood by the sink with our hands on the counter, the way sailors set hands on rails. "I thought protecting Daniel meant protecting our plan," she said. "Protecting a person means protecting their choices," I said. "A plan can be edited. A person shouldn't be." After the notary left without his signature, after the soufflés slumped into honest puddles, Daniel walked me to the car. He put my coat around my shoulders as if I were the one who had been saved. "Mom," he said, voice low, "I wanted to be enough for them." "You were," I said. "That's why they wanted more." He laughed and looked up as if the stars might co-sign something kinder. Did you plan all that?" "I planned to tell the truth," I said. The rest planned itself. He opened my door and leaned the way he used to when his seatbelt got stuck. "I'm sorry," he said. "For not reading, for not seeing. We all learn to read at different ages," I said. "Tonight you learned another alphabet. A is ask, B is breathe, C is consider, D is don't sign when the piano is too loud. E is everything that is urgent can wait long enough for clarity." In the weeks that followed, the audit did what audits do when they are not invited to lie. The foundation apologized to the world in phrases that smelled like a handbook called How to Survive a Scandal. Victor stepped aside to spend time with family, which is what men say when they need to meet themselves. Monica sent flowers to my doorstep. I let the wind have them. Then she sent a letter to Lila, which my daughter-in-law read in my kitchen, where coffee doesn't pretend to be anything but honest. I love you, it said. I thought I was protecting you from need. I forgot that need isn't a flaw. It's a doorbell. She signed it, Mom, softer than Monica. If you filmed it, daylight over a conference table. Ms. Carter circling numbers with a pen that does not apologize. Revised documents with shorter sentences. Monica standing at a window that she thought was a mirror and learned otherwise. Savannah kept on being Savannah. Barges moving like stubborn thoughts. Spanish moss like old lace with good stories. Cobblestones polite to shoes, unkind to ankles. The river insisted on being itself. So did I. I bought a mint plant for the window that keeps its promises. I labeled the pot receipts. It makes me smile each morning, a green ledger that drinks light. On Thursdays, I volunteer at a little fund that helps caregivers breathe between breaths. We keep a kettle on and a folder labeled Questions You're Allowed to Ask. Miss Carter teaches how to read papers that want to read you first. The room fills with women who are done being surprised and men who have decided to become good ancestors. Daniel started a small consultancy with 2 friends who prefer good work to good rooms. He calls before he signs anything, and sometimes just to tell me the clouds look like continents drifting toward each other. A neighbor's old dog adopted our block. Each afternoon, he settles on my stoop and listens while I water the mint. I tell him, some days the world is a contract. Some days it's a cup of tea. He thumps his tail like a notary who has, at last, seen better. I wrote a thank you card to the waiter's mother, who didn't know me. Your son knows how to open a door quietly, I wrote. That is a rare skill in a noisy world. I tucked a grocery gift card inside because gratitude is also a ladder, and it's my turn to hold the bottom. If you're listening and you've seen rooms like this, polite rooms with hungry paper, tell me which city you're listening from. I want to see how far the truth can travel on our feet. And if you have a story about pretending to be small so you could make something big happen, I'm listening. We all are. Have you ever signed something because the room was pretty? Who reads with you when you're tired? What do you keep in your ledger? Numbers, names, or both? One night, when the moon made the street look like a ribbon I could tie around a gift, I wrote Monica a letter I did not mail. Some letters heal better at home. Dear Monica, you tried to measure me with a ruler that came free inside a magazine. I don't fit. Poor is not an insult. It is a language. Naive is not an illness. It is a choice some of us make to test whether the world will behave without being told. You thought I would sign because the paper looked like a napkin at your favorite restaurant. But some of us learn to eat standing up while holding a sleeping child. Paper cannot scare us. I hope you learn to love your daughter's no. Simone. I folded it and placed it between pages 14 and 41 of the blue ledger. Some truths prefer the company of other truths. For a bookmark, I use an old bus transfer from the year Daniel learned his 6s on the ride to school. He whispered math-like secrets. We still write numbers together.